Hey everyone, it's Jim
and Charles
from Mellow Amps. And today, in episode number 14, we're going to talk about the new modern line universal 6or12SN7 kit preamp.
Surprise! Normally we've talked about them a lot more before they get to that stage.
Yeah, but first caution everyone. Electronics and tube amplifiers can have very high voltages present, which can be lethal. Exercise extreme caution when working around them. Always consult a professional technician when in doubt. So in our business, it typically takes about 6 months, a ton of cash to develop a new kit. In the case of the new OTL kit headphone power amp, it took about 2 years. Now, in fairness, we did design basically 2 different kits, even though we're only going to release one of them.
And it's still not quite done yet either, but we're almost at the end stretch.
Yeah, and in fact, talking about the before we get to the new 6or12SN7, what's up to date with the coming OTL headphone kit?
Well, here's the prototype right here, but
it's going to have to be transferred into a modern line chassis this size.
And we just got the parts for it in. So we have the main PCB, we have the chassis parts here, and these just came in yesterday. And as soon as one of us gets a little bit of time, we're going to build the first production prototype.
Hopefully over the weekend. I've already prepped a board. And I mean, the schematic is done, it's proven, the listening tests are done, basic bench testings have been done. The sound is just absolutely stunning. And one of the interesting things is we had a comment from somebody who said, power amp, it's not a power amp. And
it's not amplifying voltage?
Well, yeah, but to be a power amp, you don't necessarily have to amplify voltage. In fact, the vast majority of power amps, audio power amps anyways, don't amplify voltage. They amplify current, at least in the final power stage. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of amplifiers, power amplifiers, will have 1, 2, and very commonly with solid state is they'll have 3 stages. So they'll have, in stage 1, they'll have a voltage gain or preamplifier stage. In stage 2, they'll have perhaps a phase splitting stage that's combined with a driver stage. A driver stage just brings the voltage up even more so that the output devices can handle it.
And they tend to supply some more current as well to those output devices.
That's right. You'll almost never see the first voltage gain stage supplying current, but the last stage, the power stage, the output stage, that's a current driving stage, and that's what this is. Mm-hmm. So it's not an integrated headphone amp. A lot of people who are into headphones basically buy a box. You plug your source into it, maybe even it has a source supply, but you plug your DAC into it, or your streamer, and
it does all the stages in one go.
It does all the stages in one go. We're going to talk more about that when we have the kit ready to go out to test builders. That's probably coming fairly soon, about a month from now, and we actually still have a few slots for test builders. So if you're interested, I'll actually put a link in below in the video to our test builder policy. It's pretty straightforward. But we do take a list, and you have to be on the list to be a test builder. So that means you have to actually read the policy, contact us, be accepted as a test builder, and then I'll get you on the list. And I think we have 6 on the list already, mm-hmm. and we will take up to 10. I think we did 10 for the phono preamp, and that actually worked really well because we got more input. We had more builders finish fairly quickly and get reviews into the store. In fact, talking about reviews, it's easy to get distracted.
Yeah.
We've been getting reviews on the Rocket preamp. That's the 6N1P preamp. And we've been getting reviews on the Universal Phono preamp, and the reviews, I've been almost blushing. The reviews have been so amazingly good.
And they've both been compared very favorably to some other very high-end, well-known preamps out there. So if you're interested in checking out what people think, pop on over to the Mellow Amp store and take a look.
Yeah, and if you were on sort of the fence, I don't know if these guys really make great sounding gear. They talk a good talk, but do they make a good amp? Well, read the reviews, and I think you'll be convinced. Okay, so moving on, we also redesigned. You can't really see it, but we redesigned the original phono PCB. It's one of our best-selling PCBs from the classic line, and the circuit's identical. In fact, the circuit's identical to the modern line version, though the PCB, of course, is much smaller.
And the layout's different on it, of course.
Yeah. But the circuit's basically identical. A lot of people who are on a tight budget and like to scrounge, have a parts bin, and like to save some money and maybe build their own chassis, buy the PCBs from us. And you can save a huge amount of money over the cost of the kit, though. I mean, you still have to find your own transformer and your own chassis. But these save you an enormous amount of time and trouble. You just build our circuit, put it on the PCB. The PCB labeling, as I mentioned, has been improved. So the big thing that we've started doing more and more of, as much as we can, is getting the label, the component numbers out of the box where the component goes.
So after it's built, it's actually easier to troubleshoot and find the right component and get your probe where it's supposed to go.
Yeah. So we're doing that as we re-release boards and as we design new kits. That's our new labeling protocol. We can't always do that because there's just physically not enough room to do it. So sometimes the label will have to have, the box will have to have its number. Anyways, we were out of stock of these. They're back in stock. There's a cathode follower board that will allow you to build the modern line version. So it's a 9-pin dual mono cathode board. And of course, there's power supply boards as well. So all that stuff's back in stock. And yeah, I mean, for DIYers, this is, it's just a great thing. I wish years ago this was available to me back in the 70s. Back in the 70s, we made our own PCBs. Nobody was supplying bare PCBs, or very few people. So,
and especially for something like a phono circuit, where if you were trying to point-to-point wire that, it can get extremely complex very quickly.
Yeah, and it's easy to make mistakes. It's easy to introduce noise, whereas a well-designed PCB that has some point-to-point wiring to it, to junctions, makes for a much quieter, a much simpler build. Okay, now on to the main event. So for months now, we knew that we wanted to bring out a modern line version of our best-selling kit. The best-selling kit has been one of the first designs I came up with, which was the universal 6or12SN7. It just means that it can basically play or roll any 6SN7 or 12SN7 ever made, including the very early lower spec GTs, such as the Sylvania Bad Boys. And it's a great sounding circuit. We actually had a Mark II, or a version 2 of it, in the production run about a year after we introduced it. We made an improvement to the cathode follower stage. It wasn't a huge improvement, but it brought the bass up nicely, and it taught us a little bit about the importance of designing the cathode follower stage. Up until that point, we had sort of thought, well, a cathode follower is a cathode follower, right? No, it's not. So what we did with this design is we have twin triodes, one for each channel, and we have one half of the tube is the input and voltage gain stage, and the other half's the cathode follower. So it's a very simple design. It's a fairly low gain preamp. I think it has 5.4 volts RMS.
Yeah, somewhere around there, yeah.
If you give it 1 volt on the input side.
So a gain of roughly 5.5.
It's suitable for most applications. But we learned some things when we built the Rocket preamp. And one of the things we learned about the Rocket, or we think we've learned, is that a higher gain availability, even if you don't need the voltage, seems to improve the sonics overall. So we've been thinking for months now about, this is going to have to become a modern line. Is it going to be this preamp and be
Just transposed into the new chassis?
It would have been dead easy to do, but as designers, we can't do that. We wouldn't be able to sleep at night.
And we've learned so much since the development of even the second version of that we wanted to apply our knowledge.
So how did we do it in 4 days? Well, it wasn't 4 days. It was like 4 months of sort of thinking and casually chatting about it, and then 4 days of actually building it. And I was able to use the phono PCB. The modern line phono PCB is a dual gain stage. It's got lots of other circuitry for the RIAA and grid stoppers left, right, and center and things like that. But it has the complete topology that we need for this to at least build a prototype. And what we did was we still have two 6SN7s or 12SN7s, but we now have two gain stages. So one after the other. So we have a lot more gain. In fact, if you put a volt RMS into this, you can get out 40 volts RMS clean.
So it's another high gain preamp like the Rocket. Actually, I think its maximum output is even higher on this.
Yeah, so that's exciting. So we took this circuit and we doubled it basically. And that circuit allows us to play the lower spec GTs. And in fact, in here right now are 12SN7 GT Sylvania Bad Boys. New old stock, new in the box, and they sound stunning. And the interesting thing is, before that, we were doing bench testing with the Photon 6SN7s. And we were just talking about preamp tubes over on our other channel, on Tube Lab. And Charles came up with, yesterday I think you said, you know what, these photons are...
They're the poor man's bad boy.
They are.
Yeah.
They are very close. They don't quite have the final refinement in the bass that the bad boys have, but they've got like...
They're very good otherwise. So,
they're very good. They've got like 95, 96, 97% of the bad boys, and they're half the price. So yeah, we've been recommending the photons forever. Anyways, so you've got two gain stages. We've got a lot of gain. So we've got high gain. That means that we need a very, very low noise power supply stage. Because with all that amplification, if there's something in the power supply that's not filtered out...
Any 60 or 120 hertz ripple in there, you're going to hear it.
Yeah. So where do we have a very, very low noise power supply design?
Our phono.
And that board that we used is the phono board. So it had the circuit. So I just built the supply, and the voltages are correct.
It actually came in, I think, within about 5 volts of the original universal.
And then I stole the cathode follower stage off of the Rocket preamp and off of the phono preamp. And
so we've essentially created an amalgam here of different amplifiers. And the most amazing thing, I think, for it is that it worked first shot.
It worked first shot.
Yeah.
That never happens. I mean, we know basically what we're doing, and we can electrically design something on paper and build it, and there's always some little things. Most often it's not a big thing, but in this case, the cathode follower, which is the 6N6P, which in our opinion now is probably the best cathode follower tube ever built, period. So we've used it in the Rocket, we used it in the Universal Phono, and now we're going to use it in the Universal 6or12SN7, and when we're using almost the same circuit. There's a little bit different operating point in the Rocket. It's a fussy tube to get going properly as a cathode follower. It likes to oscillate and just basically run out of control if you're not careful as to how you've got it operating. But once it's operating in a correct point where it's happy, it's rock solid. We've never had a problem with it. And more than the fact that it worked perfectly right away, the sound. The sound was just simply stunning. And when we built the Rocket preamp and put it in the system, I thought, we tried to design an affordable, compact, easy for first-time builder preamp that sounded pretty good. Those were our goals at the time.
Yeah.
And at the time, we didn't have a modern line chassis. So we needed to invent a chassis, design, build it, tool up for it. We ended up with a commercial grade 3D printer, and Charles ramped up his 3D printing skills. I mean, there were a lot of things that had to happen to get to that point. And we did all of that. And that preamp, the Rocket, sounded so good. I thought, this is just insane. How did we try to make a budget preamp that sort of sounded good, sound this good? Well, it just happened. The 6N1P is an amazing tube. Our design knowledge at the power supply stage has improved over the years, and it will continue to improve. You just learn little tiny things. Each design iteration gives you a little bit more insight into what makes for great sound.
Yeah. And when we transferred the universal into this and essentially translated all this new knowledge onto it, it ended up being an absolutely incredible sounding preamp. It just blew us away, the amount of detail that we could hear across the full frequency range.
So it took what was a very good sounding preamp design, and it did some things. So one of the things that it did is that it created a much better definition around the instruments, the vocals, and the stereo separation and the soundstage. This was good. This is stunning. The other thing it did that was quite surprising is it gave an amazing amount of clarity. Now, clarity and soundstage and definition, all those things are sort of related to each other. And a lot of it probably has to do with the fact that we use an extremely low noise power supply. In fact, when the volume knob is at 0 on this preamp, the self noise of it is at the limit of our testing equipment. It's down around 4 millivolts.
Yeah.
Which 4 millivolts, 4 thousandths of a volt.
You will pick up more than that on average just from the air coming in, radio waves, things like that, stuff that's powered on around it.
Yeah, and the last thing that really surprised us was the bass reproduction. Now, I'm not talking about thumpa, thumpa, thumpa bass. I'm just talking about getting all of those bass frequencies reproduced cleanly, clearly, with good articulation, and it does that in spades. And all of our initial listening tests were done with the Photon 6SN7. It's only this morning that I started putting in the Sylvania Bad Boys first to see if the GTs would run in a high gain stage, because we are putting a lot more voltage onto the grid than we have ever done before, and it works perfectly. It can do the same maximum output as a
GTA or GTB equivalent.
And we're going to steal something from the Rocket. The Rocket has an option to either bypass the cathode stage. In the case of the Rocket, there's only one gain stage, or not to bypass. And that creates more gain when you bypass. It creates a little different sound. And to not bypass lowers the gain a little bit, which can be useful if you've got too much gain, and changes the sound a little bit. So now we have 2 gain stages, but we're only going to bypass stage 1. It doesn't make any sense to bypass the second stage, I don't think.
Yeah, whatever the bypass is doing on the first stage then gets amplified by the second stage, and then the sound gets affected that way.
Yeah. So, and all of that extra gain that gets amplified in stage 1, of course, gets picked up and amplified times, right? Because each stage amplifies whatever the output of the first stage or second stage is, however many stages you have. So this is coming, and I'm really excited about it. I don't even want to take the prototype out of the system. So it goes, as soon as the bench testing during the day is done, it goes back into the system. But Charles is going to have to, we're going to have to get the new OTL kit headphone out to test builders first before we can start this.
Yeah, as much as we want to dig right into the design work on this, and a lot of it is, to be fair, fairly easy to do, a lot of modification of stuff that we already have. We have to get this out first.
Yeah, and in fact the schematic it's not complete, but it's the basic schematic is done because we had so many little variations between all of the merging of various components that I said to Charles, we've got to get the schematic done before we forget what the heck we did.
Or we won't be able to keep it straight.
Yeah, so that's done, so we won't lose the circuit design. And the last thing before we go is in development right now are 2 monoblocks. Now Charles is he's trying to work on an affordable, mid-powered, there is no such thing as affordable high-powered tube monoblock. They just don't exist.
Yeah.
So we're aiming for 10 watts RMS per channel.
It might be somewhere between 5 and 10. It's all going to depend on what we end up with there. It's hard to do with tubes on a budget.
Yeah. So, and you know, at the same time, I'm working on probably a pure solid state monoblock. And I've got all kinds of transistors and output devices coming in from all over the world. Some of it's vintage, some of it's modern manufacture. So it's going to be a lot of fun because solid state devices have a sound just like tubes. It makes sense, right?
And just like tubes, they've been used in all sorts of different topologies and circuits and things like that. And we think that a lot of what we love about our design with tubes is actually going to transfer over into solid state devices as well.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. It's one of our priorities because we want a complete system. At some point, we want to start going to audio shows and expanding the business and bring in more customers, and having a complete system is a priority. So we actually have to get the monoblocks designed, and then we have to get into the speaker kits. And that's a whole, I have no idea where that's going to go.
That's a whole new can of worms for us to waste a couple of years on, probably.
Yeah, because we really need a small factory environment for that, and that's a really big, tough leap because we need volume. We need production numbers. We're going to need some help. We need some help now, but we can just barely keep up with orders now. The kit business is just growing so fast. Yeah, so that's really exciting. It's something that we're thinking ahead, a year ahead, really, maybe even 2 years ahead. So, but yeah, so look for this. This is coming along, and
look for this even sooner, because once we have the production prototype together, we're going to start shooting the build videos and getting the manual together, and you'll be seeing a lot more of the new version.
Are you crossing your fingers? Because there's lots of components that have to actually sandwich. We're going to use the same modern line sandwich construction.
Yeah, and we actually haven't tested the new PCB yet, so this is always our, we cross our fingers whenever we first power it on.
Yeah, I think I got my toes crossed too, because in circuit-wise, it's not the most complicated we've ever designed. In fact, it's actually a pretty simple, elegant circuit. The big complexities to the design are actually all in the power supply. All these caps are all filter caps that you see here.
But it's doing a lot of things that we haven't done before, so that always gets us a little worried until we've got the experience under our belt.
Yeah, but the big problem, I think, is getting the sandwich construction, because all these caps have to show them the top plate again.
Yeah.
They all have to go on the PCB, and then they all have to slide through the holes in alignment with the RCA jacks and
the transformer cover,
the tube sockets. Yeah. So if Charles got it right, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to give him a big kiss, but I think I'll shake his hand, because it will be quite an accomplishment. And our manufacturer is superb. The PCB manufacturer we use they're the best. And their tolerance is really, really close.
Yeah, so I'm expecting us to be fine with this, but we'll see in a bit.
Generally, if we've made a mistake, if there is a mistake, it's our mistake, not our manufacturer's mistake. Anyways, lots of fun things coming. Yeah. This is Jim.
And Charles.
Signing off. Cheers, everyone.